Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Would everyone please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lewis and Clark County Planning and Zoning Commission. For the record, my name is Commissioner Susan Good-Giese, and I have the honor of chairing the commission for the balance of the year. Let's see, behind me, to my right, if you could just stand up, we have Commissioner Jim McCormick. To Jim's left would be Commissioner Andy Hunthausen. Directly across from me, we have Joyce Evans. Joyce has been a citizen member of this commission for a really long time, and thanks for all your service. And then the other members of this commission are Paulette Dehart. And if we could just have a round of applause for Paulette, because she only has a few more days left. Will be finished with more than 40 years of service to Lewis and Clark County on Friday. So thank you, oh gosh, Paulette, for all the work you've done for us all these years. And then behind Paulette is Angie Sparks. Angie is the person who is our the county clerk of court. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, you guys. I haven't ever convened anything in this particular room before. So we have established a quorum. We have had some introductions, and so I have just a little item I would like to read to you. Before we begin our agenda item, Ms. Morgan will explain some of this evening's procedures for the Zoom participants. Ms. Morgan, could you please inform us about tonight's meeting?
Welcome, everyone. Hello? It's on. Welcome everyone tonight. Thank you for joining us at the Great Northern this evening. We're meeting in this space to afford us the opportunity to participate in your local government and to be socially distant from each other. We also are hosting this meeting electronically via Zoom. We ask that you be patient should we have technical difficulties with this platform. For those of you that are participating via Zoom, we ask that you keep your microphone muted throughout the meeting unless you are acknowledged and unmuted by the meeting host. This meeting is being recorded. All public comments will become part of the permanent public record. Comments may be made as an audio statement when the host unmutes you. Once called upon, please state your name and address for the record. In order to document your participation, we ask that you join with an appropriate screen name. And if you would like to comment, click on the raise hand button to notify the meeting host that you have a comment. The host will unmute you when the board is ready to take your comment. Now, some people are also participating via phone. If you have joined us by dialing in and would like to make a comment, press *9 to raise your hand. And when you hear the prompt, you have been unmuted. Please slowly state your name and address and make your comment. When you are done speaking, our moderator will return your call to muted. You may raise your hand again by pressing *9. We have Ms. Cronick at the computer up here to summarize your comments. Before you are done speaking, we will be asking you to verify that we have summarized your comments accurately. Because we have a live audience and others participating electronically, when it becomes time to provide public comment, we will alternate between live and electronic participants. For those in the audience, we have provided a microphone, which we will disinfect with a spray or wipe in between use as directed by the Great Northern. We respectfully ask that you wear your mask and maintain 6 feet of separation between others for safety as required by the Great Northern Hotel and their compliance with the governor's order. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, tonight, the Planning and Zoning Commission will be holding a public hearing regarding the adoption of a neighborhood plan for Special Zone District number 51. And they will also be making a recommendation to the County Commission regarding regulations for Special Zone District 51. Sorry.
Why don't we go ahead and get started?
Why don't we go ahead and get started with the presentation? Lindsay, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right. First of all, I'd like to start off with the statutory process for creating a Part 1 zoning district. Step 1 of the process is when the county commission creates a district boundary based upon a citizen initiated petition. In this case, we did receive a petition from property owners within this district, and on January 7th of this year, the county commission created the district boundaries for this district on January 7th of this year. Step 2 is where we are tonight, the Planning and Zoning Commission adopting a neighborhood plan and making a recommendation to the County Commission on land use regulations. Step 3 will be on October 1st. This is when the County Commission would consider adopting land use regulations to implement the adopted neighborhood plan considered tonight. The purposes for tonight's meeting would be to present the neighborhood plan and zoning regulations for the future development of this neighborhood. We're going to be holding a public hearing regarding the proposed neighborhood plan and regulations. And then there would be the consideration of adoption of the neighborhood plan for Special Zone District 51. One of the things that I have included in the Commission's packet is a resolution number 2020-01 that would be for the Commission to consider regarding the adoption of that neighborhood plan. And then the final thing that would happen tonight would be the recommendation to the County Commission regarding the regulations for the district. So just to give you a little idea about the 10-mile alluvial fan zone district, you can see I've got included 2 maps up here showing you where the location of this district is. It's located south of Forestvale Road, east of Green Meadow Drive, and then it follows Mill Road and then follows some property boundaries for the remainder of its southern and eastern boundaries. As far as the natural environment for this district, water quantity appears to be good in this area. Groundwater recharge occurs from infiltration of precipitation and stream loss from the main Helena Valley Irrigation District canal when operating. Water quality appears to be acceptable in this area. As far as air quality, Helena Valley is prone to air inversions that trap emissions from wood-burning stoves. With regard to wildland fire, much of this area is located in or adjacent to grassland, and although the growth policy rates this area as having a low wildfire risk, this fuel type does tend to have a very high rate of flame spread, especially when wind-driven. With regard to earthquakes, the Scratch Gravel Hills fault line runs parallel to Green Meadow Drive, and it's located northwest of this area. The neighborhood is also located on soils that are identified as having susceptibility to liquefaction that range from low to high. With regard to wildlife, there are two predominant land cover types in this neighborhood: grassland and urban development. There are also small riparian areas and agricultural lands in the neighborhood. According to Fish, Wildlife and Parks, there's the potential for wildlife in this neighborhood, and they rank the habitat quality from 3 to 2. A 1 is considered the highest quality habitat, while a 6 is considered the lowest quality habitat for wildlife resources. With regard to floodplain, the neighborhood contains special flood hazard areas, also known as 100-year floodplain. Specifically, this district has AO zones, which are generally include areas of sheet flooding with depths that range from 1 to 3 feet. There are also numerous ephemeral channels that are located in the neighborhood, and they periodically carry or hold stormwater. Some of these channels are located in a special flood hazard area and some are not. These channels may play an important role in storing stormwater and or floodwaters and should therefore be protected from future construction or development. Here's some maps that I've included. You can see the map that would be on the left-hand side shows you that special flood hazard area, and the map on the right shows you the location of ephemeral channels within the district. As far as zoning, there are 7 zone districts that are located within a half of a mile of the neighborhood. Numbers 2, 13A, 23, 25, 37, 39, and 45 are located in close proximity. Just depending on the zoning district, they may have agricultural type zoning, residential, in some cases there's some commercial in this area. As far as the development pattern, the existing land use pattern in this neighborhood is a mix of residential, commercial, and agricultural or open space uses, and to the north of this district there are 2 cemeteries. Got some maps of the transportation network for this neighborhood. One's kind of a zoomed back view, and then there's one that's a little bit closer. As far as current traffic volumes in this area, the following annual average daily trips in this area have been provided by the county engineer. Green Meadow Drive north of Custer has over 4,653 ADTs. McHugh Lane south of Forestvale has over 1,000. McHugh Lane north of Custer has over 4,500. Mill Lane west of North Montana Avenue has over 1,700.
Hold up 1 second. They're not hearing you very well.
They're not hearing you very well, so we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, everybody.
No, hey.
Huh?
We'll get it fixed. Hopefully. This room has always done that. Forever. Yeah, we had a lot of things. There's a sweet spot.
My entire life I've got in trouble for being late to that. Hello?
These are wireless.
Is that better?
These are wireless. There's
73 degrees when I
this room
drove up
does
this
this
afternoon.
always has.
That's great.
I don't know why, but she's sitting right in the sweet
How well
spot.
can everybody hear me?
Move her somehow.
Are you okay? Are the Zoom people able to hear me?
Barely, but better. So if you can just
Super loud.
speak loudly.
Yeah, I just
turn the gain down or something.
Okay.
But where would you like to move to?
We'll figure out where to put her in here, just to get her out of that. She can. I can just go straight back. Or we can do this. I'll do this. Yeah.
Test.
I have people communicating with me on Zoom, so I'm trying.
Test. Test. Are we ready to resume?
I am ready.
Okay, let's go ahead and roll.
Okay, I'll continue with the current traffic volumes and routes. Mill Road west of North Montana has over 1,700 ADTs. Mill Road east of Green Meadow has just under 1,000 ADTs. Forestville Road east of Green Meadow has almost 500 ADTs. Forestville Road west of McHugh has over 700 ADTs. Forestville Road east of McHugh, over 700 ADTs, and Forestville Road west of North Montana, 932 ADTs.
We need to pause. We've got no sound. Well, no, they have a screen as well. Zoom is not hearing. Is there a way to turn up the sound, the house sound to get that? Can someone go ahead and talk? Go ahead and test.
Hello? That's pretty loud.
Is the Zoom getting it right from that speaker right above you?
I have my microphone aimed at that speaker, so yes. A couple more times, but slower.
Karen, how are you doing this evening? What else would you like me to say?
It's still not going through. I don't know how to get me. Sorry, I don't mean to be in your way. Again.
Okay, Karen, how is the sound doing now for the Zoom participants?
Thank you.
I'll continue with the current road classifications. Green Meadow Drive is considered a minor arterial. McHugh Lane, a major collector. Forestville Road, a major collector, and Mill Road, a major collector. There are also a number of local roads within this district. Bonanza Court, Canyon Court, Crescent Moon Drive, Dimsdale Drive, Dutchman Drive, Edgerton Road, Hedge Drive, Kerr Drive, Rainier Road, Robin Drive, Rhonda Road, Sahara Court, Scribner Road, Sewell Road, and Statler Road. With regard to the current road conditions for the materials and collectors, Green Meadow Drive is asphalt surfaced, so are McHugh Lane, Forestville Road, and Mill Road. As far as the local roads, there's a variety of different road conditions. Bonanza Court, it's asphalt or chip sealed surface, and it appears to have a crown. Crescent Moon Drive, it has new asphalt, chip sealed surface, and it appears to have a crown. Dimsdale Drive is also asphalt, chip sealed surface, and appears to have a crown. Dutchman Drive, asphalt, chip sealed surface, and appears to have a crown, but it does have some potholes. Edgerton Road, asphalt, chip sealed surface, and it appears to have a crown. Kerr Drive is a mix of old chip seal surface and gravel. It's rough and without a proper crown, and it's full of potholes. Lynn Road is gravel base, surface is rough and without a proper crown, and it's also full of potholes. Rainier Road, gravel base, surface is rough and without a proper crown, and it's full of shallow potholes. Robin Drive is old chip sealed surface, which is rough and has potholes. Rhonda Road, old chip sealed surface, which is rough and has potholes. Scribner Road, asphalt chip sealed surface, which appears to be crowned and in good shape. Scribner Road, I apologize, Sewell Road, it has a gravel base, surface appears to be good but without a proper crown with some shallow potholes. And Statler Road has an asphalt chip sealed surface, and it appears to be crowned and in good shape. As far as maintenance, MDT maintains Green Meadow Drive. Lewis and Clark County maintains Forestville, Mill, McHugh, Rainier, Robin, Rhonda, and Sewell. And then RIDs maintain roads in the Big Sky and South Forestville #2 subdivisions. And then maintenance of other roads in the neighborhood are the responsibility of individual property owners or homeowners associations. As far as the current land uses in the area, there are 6 land uses that are present in this neighborhood: urban residential, rural residential, rural residential farmstead, rural apartment, exempt or non-valued property / parkland, and then vacant land. There are 258 properties located in this neighborhood. Parcels range in size from under 10,000 square feet in size to over 40 acres in size. Majority of the parcels range between 20,000 square feet and 44,000 square feet in size. Here is a picture of the district, and it's showing you 2 different zoning classifications. The area that's shown in that lighter blue is the urban growth area zone district, and the area that's shown in that yellow on the west side of the district would be the transitional growth area zone district. When we looked at this district, we looked at a variety of scenarios based on what the growth policy recommendations are in that urban growth area, and then also in that transitional growth area. When we looked at doing a build-out analysis for both of those, we decided it didn't make sense to do a build-out analysis for that transitional area. Again, that's the area to the west that's shown in yellow. The reason for this is because that area is almost completely built out. So we looked at, for the build-out analysis scenarios that I'm going to show you, we only looked specifically at the urban growth area. And in the first scenario, we looked at if there were quarter-acre lots that were created in that urban growth area. Our growth policy actually calls for quarter-acre lots and smaller in urban growth areas. Within a transitional growth area, it calls for quarter-acre lots and up to 10 acres. just depending on the type of infrastructure available or implemented when a development happens. So again, in scenario number one, we're in the urban growth area, we're looking at quarter-acre lots. Now this build-out scenario is based on development utilizing urban-type infrastructure. So sewer system, a public water system, streets with curbs and so on. And when we did this scenario, we also looked at excluding all areas where there was 100-year floodplain, okay? So it was actually taken out of the equation. And what we found was there's the potential to add 282 home sites, an additional 2,700 vehicle trips per day, no additional wells or septics, because again, you'd be on urban type infrastructure, and then school-age children, there would be 423 additional students based on the calculations that we come up with when we look at what lots generate as far as the number of students when they're created. The lots were created. The second build-out analysis, we looked at 1.5 acre lots. And the build-out scenario in this case is based on the premise that the overall density is one lot per 1.5 acres, and it assumes the use of septic systems and individual wells when the properties are developed. Again, we excluded the floodplain from this calculation. We looked at, there would be an additional 40 homes in this area, an additional 380 vehicle trips per day, and there would be 40 septic systems and wells, and school-age children would be an additional 60 kids. We also looked at a build-out analysis scenario number 3, which would be 10 acre lots. Again, it's one lot per 10 acres. We excluded the property that was within the special flood hazard area. This is considered more of a rural density. There would be 6 homes, 57 additional vehicle trips, 6 wells, and 6 septic systems, and then an additional 9 kids. So here's basically what the build-out analysis would look like, based on these different scenarios that we discussed. As far as the growth policy recommendations, again, this is the Helena Valley planning area, and you can see where the city of Helena is located on this map. It's that gray area. And then to the north of that, you can see the red area, that's that urban growth area. You can see the yellow area above that, which is that transitional growth area. And then the green area is the rural growth area. This district, again, it spans both that urban growth area and the transitional growth area. Now, the goals for an urban growth area is to create an orderly and efficient land use pattern that facilitates the cost-effective expansion of public utilities in the urban growth area, provides incentives for development at urban densities in the urban growth area through public-private partnerships and streamlined development reviews, coordinates growth management strategies for the urban growth area within the city limits of Helena, and it addresses any constraints to development present in the urban growth area through zoning and other mechanisms. Now, goals for a transitional growth area would be to provide general suburban density that responds to the development constraints, limit development density on poor quality roads and in floodplains, adopt design standards that match the density of development, develop public-private partnerships to improve road and fire protection, and provide flexibility with planned unit developments that address the development constraints. Now, I've basically gone over some of the overview of this area, how it relates to the county's growth policy, and now I want to touch a little bit on the regulations that have been drafted for this district. Now, there's only 4 sections to the district. The first section is the general provisions. And essentially, this is just the title of the district, the authority, the purpose of the district, how it applies. We also get into, some vested rights under the zoning, and then the allowance to continue non-conforming uses. It states under that non-conforming use section, all parcels and uses of land that exist at the time of adoption of these regulations may continue in conformance with all local, state, or federal laws and regulations. Expansions of non-conforming uses are expressly prohibited. So there's just some basic provisions that, that general provisions chapter gets into. The second chapter is the zone, district, and map. This is where you learn a little bit more about what the boundaries are of the district, and it also talks about maximum and minimum parcel sizes, specifically to the urban growth area, that larger area that we talked about. There is no minimum lot size being proposed in this zoning document outside of any areas that are located in that special flood hazard area or 100-year floodplain. If a development is being proposed and it includes any part of that 100-year floodplain, staff has recommended that there be a 10-acre minimum lot size for those properties. That's something that's in compliance with the county's growth policy. With regard to the transitional growth area, the transitional growth area has a 1/4 acre minimum lot size. And again, it will depend on if somebody is proposing a development, what type of infrastructure is that person proposing? Is it something that has, urban type infrastructure, or is it something that's more rural in nature? There's also some uses that are being proposed in the urban growth area. The uses would be accessory uses. Those are uses that if you have a house, an accessory use would be the garage or a shed that would go with that house, things like that. But then there could also be other types of uses where you would have, accessory uses as well. Bed and breakfast, condominiums that would include up to a 4-plex, group homes, home daycares, home occupations, multiple dwelling unit residences, such as triplexes or 4-plexes, parks and trails, professional services, single dwelling unit residences, townhomes, 2 dwelling unit residences, and those would be the uses that would be allowed in that UGA is currently being proposed. Within that transitional growth area zone district, we would also allow accessory uses. We would allow agriculture, group homes, home daycares, home occupations, parks and trails, and then single dwelling unit residences. In this case, there's only 1 single dwelling unit residence or group home that's allowed on each parcel, which is different from what's allowed under the UGA. As far as setbacks and bulk requirements, lots that are under a 1/4 acre in size, the building setback from the property line or road right-of-way would be 10 feet. Maximum building height would be 24 feet, and maximum lot coverage would be 30%. And lots that are larger than a 1/4 acre in size would have a minimum building setback from property lines and road rights-of-way of 15 feet, and maximum building height of 35 feet, and maximum lot coverage of 25%. There are also some additional provisions under the zoning. It says that residential, commercial, and accessory structures are prohibited within a special flood hazard area. And there is a section called ephemeral channel standards, and I want to go over this section with you. It states there are ephemeral channels located within the zone district that are capable of carrying stormwater and floodwaters. Says see Exhibit B for the approximate location of these channels. Actually included Exhibit B during my presentation when I showed you the map of the channels. It says any construction within these channels that would reduce the capacity of the channels to carry or hold stormwater or floodwaters is prohibited. Prior to any construction within or adjacent to these drainages, a property owner must contact the County Public Works Department to determine the exact location of the channel or channels. If a proposed construction project would be located within a channel, the property owner shall work with the department staff to determine if the proposed project will impact the stormwater or floodwaters capacity of the channel. This may require a property owner or applicant to provide a hydrology and hydraulic analysis to verify no impact. If the department determines that the proposed work will reduce the capacity of the channel, the construction project will be prohibited. Okay. Now, chapter 3 is administration, so essentially it goes over the different processes that you would go through. If somebody is looking to seek a variance from the regulations, it lays out the process for that, or if somebody is looking to amend the regulations or amend the map associated with the regulations. There are processes that are laid out in the zoning for those things. There's also a process to appeal decisions that come from the county zoning administrator, and so on. The final chapter is specific to definitions for the district, and it lays out all the different terms and provides a definition for each of those terms. So just essentially to kind of summarize this presentation that I've given to you this evening, again, the commissioners already created the boundary for the district, so they have completed step 1 of the 3-step process for establishing a Part 1 zone district. Tonight is step 2, where they are considering adopting the neighborhood plan and then making a recommendation to the county commission on land use regulations. And then step 3 will occur on October 1st at the county commission chambers, where the county commission will decide whether or not they want to adopt regulations. That day they will also be holding a public hearing, and they may or may not make their decision that day, but they will have that information before them, and they will hold that public hearing. Before I conclude my presentation, I just have a few more things that I want to present to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I did receive a comment letter that should have been placed on your desk. I received that over the weekend, and I was asked to provide that to you tonight. It's from Norm Rostocki. I don't believe he put his name on there, but he did want to make sure that you had that for this evening's meeting. And then I do have a few changes that I'm going to recommend to the neighborhood plan, and then also to the zoning regulations. I wanted to go through those really quickly with you. On page 35 of the document, that's 35 when you look at the top page numbers shown in red. In the second paragraph on page 35, it's stated that there are 7 zone districts that are within a half a mile, or it states that there are 6 zone districts that are within a half a mile of special zone district number 51, and there are 7. So I would like to make that change to change that number from 6 to 7. On page 50, in the last paragraph, this is regarding a DEQ approval for a proposed gravel mine on one of the lots in Special Zone District 51, and that application has been deemed incomplete. So I would like you to remove the word complete with the slash mark that's next to that. Again, that's page 50, it's the last paragraph, and it's highlighted in yellow. And then finally, with regard to the neighborhood plan on page 65, in the last paragraph, I would like you to remove the word 10 and the number 10 when referring to the number of comments that we have received. With regard to the staff's recommended changes to the zoning regulations, on the top of page 11, under section 2.4b, I wanted you to add the following sentence to the second to the last line of the paragraph. And this was something that I stated when I read the ephemeral channel regulations that staff has proposed. Would like you to add the language that says, This may require a property owner / applicant to provide a hydrology and hydraulic analysis to verify no impact. Do you have any questions for me tonight?
Okay, we're gonna open this up for questions, and whoever's running Zoom, Karen, please let me know how we're doing over here for sound. Okay. All right, let's see, we'll start with questions for Lindsay. We'll be taking questions from staff and the commission. Do you have any questions for Lindsay? Any questions for Lindsay? And I can't see.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I have one, just a clarification question. Lindsay, that last amendment that you proposed there was on environmental channel standards, correct?
That's correct.
That's 2.4E, not B. 2.4E,
You are correct. Thank you.
if people are looking for it, because I looked under B for long. Thank you.
I have some questions about that, but I'll wait to see if there are any other. Are there any other members of the Planning and Zoning Commission who have questions about this? Because I do. So this is in regard to that last item that you mentioned, about this may require a property owner applicant to provide a H&H analysis to verify no impact. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit? What are we talking about here? I've seen H&H studies before that are exceptionally comprehensive. I'm kind of interested to see what we're asking folks to provide here.
Well, essentially, what they would have to do, Chairman Giese, is to work with an engineer where they would have to determine if for example, let's say they're putting in some sort of a culvert, or they want to have a crossing over one of these ephemeral channels. They need to determine if the capacity will be decreased. So they have the engineer prepare that analysis to determine if, when the water's flowing through that area, it will not be compromised or restricted in some way, something less than what its current capacity is.
Okay, I'm gonna follow on that. So, H&H studies that I've seen in the past have been extensive and expensive. I'm kind of curious about what kind of a requirement we're asking people to do. But I understand it's an engineer, maybe we're just talking about a culvert. What kind of an expense might possibly be within the realm of reason on that?
Chairman Giese, I'm not sure what the cost would be. What I do know is that it's something that may be required. It's not something that would specifically be required by County Public Works. When I talked with the county engineer about it, he said, this is something I think would be a good idea to have in there in case we have some sort of concerns about whether or not the capacity of one of these channels would be compromised in some way. And so, but unfortunately, I don't know what that cost would be to have something done, and I'm not sure how much information we would actually need with that H&H study.
Thank you. Okay, last chance for any of the Planning and Zoning Commission. If you have any questions for Lindsay, this is the time. Okay, seeing none, and Lindsay, if I go wrong here, please do tell me, because I just want to remind everybody that we're going to be taking public comment here tonight, and obviously this is a public hearing, so we're going to have two different motions that are going to come out of this tonight. And one of them will be the consideration of the neighborhood plan for special zone District 51, and that motion will be to adopt it. And this board right here in this room has the ability to do that. So they have the authority to do that. The next motion will be that they will then recommend to the county commission that this board at that point will move from a decision-making board to an advisory board. I just want to make sure that everybody is clear about what the authority is here. And Lindsay, if I'm wrong, please tell me now.
Chairman PC, you are correct. Public hearing for both, and you will decide here tonight on adoption of a neighborhood plan and make a recommendation to the county commission on regulations.
Right, and those will be two separate votes. We just want everybody to understand what we're going to be doing here tonight. Okay, so are we ready for public comment? Okay, you know what? Let's start with a couple of Zoomers. What I'd like to do is do 2 Zoom and 2 in person. We'll try to rotate it that way, make sure that everybody gets an adequate chance.
Want to say something? Let me say something.
I don't know enough to know what to say. I never proposed this.
Ms. Christopher, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We raised our hand when we couldn't hear you. And it was still difficult to hear you at the last part, but.
I'm having a hard time hearing her.
Oh. Okay, I'll move my computer closer. Can you hear now? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm trying to get close to my computer here. But anyway, we raised our hand because we couldn't hear you. And then I couldn't figure out how to unraise my hand.
Okay, and so for the record, what I'd like to ask every participant to do, whether you are participating via Zoom or here in person, when you speak, please identify yourself. If you have a hard name like mine to spell, please do spell it for us and give us your address.
Mr. Kowalczak?
Oh, hello, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. Hello, my name is Matthew Kowalczyk. My wife, Catherine Smith, and I live at 915 Forestvale Road. I've already made some comments. We have submitted comments regarding our concerns for the water quality in our neighborhood. We know that the proposed gravel operation in that area, the water table is only 14 feet below the surface of the ground. So we have great concerns about the water quality in the area. My wife has a homestead and a property, a water right here at our property. And we just want to remind people that the water is very fragile here. We lived through the flood here a couple of years ago in the springtime when we had bought our place. And we struggled. We watched pieces of the roadway being washed away off of Kerr. Literally giant pieces of asphalt were floated away by the force of the water. We watched animals drown in it. It was very, very bad. There's a lot of impact to these roads around here. We just want you to remember when you're considering development plans around here, to think about the roadways, how much weight and how much traffic these roads can bear around here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and so is this at the point of the meeting, Ms. Chronic, where we ask the person who just spoke if we have captured his comments correctly?
Headphone jack, not internal speaker.
Okay.
This is like you were listening to headphones.
So to the gentleman who just commented, if you could verify that we have captured your comments correctly, that would be great, if you're still on the line.
They cannot see my screen
Okay.
on Zoom, so I'll have to connect into that.
Okay.
Or we can read their comments out.
We had not contemplated that. Okay, all right, let's go ahead with our next Zoom participant. Please state your name and spell it and give us your address. And please speak right into the mic if you would be so kind.
Anne Marie Robinson, I've unmuted you.
Yes, my name is Anne Marie Robinson. I live at 5345 Brooklyn Court. On your road list, you forgot to list Brooklyn Court, and the status is similar to what Dutchman Court, not Drive, and Bonanza Court. I also wanted to say that we are in the transitional, and our homeowners associations have covenants for livestock, and I would assume that our covenants would take precedent over top of the zoning. I want confirmation of that, if you would, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the question was, does, Ms. Robinson's question, if I'm understanding correctly, is that they have covenants in place, where will the covenant stand in regard to any proposed zoning changes? Ms. Morgan?
Chairman Giese, to respond to that question, if you have covenants on property, you know, these are not covenants that are enforced by the county. You would still need to abide by those covenants. If there are restrictions on those properties, you would still need to adhere to those restrictions. When you're still subject to the zoning at the same time, so if the zoning doesn't have a restriction on it, but the covenants do have that restriction, you would need to follow your covenants, but it's through the covenants, you know, administrative processes or any sort of, I guess, however they're laid out, it would be up to those who enforce the covenants to enforce them. It's not something that the county would enforce. For example, I can give you an example with regard to covenants and zoning. The zoning has a setback, and the zoning setback in this case would be 15 feet from a property boundary. Covenants have a setback of 20 feet. You would need to adhere to the more stringent of the two, which is a zoning setback of 15 feet. If it was the opposite, you have a 15-foot zoning setback and the covenant setback was 10 feet, then you would adhere to the 10-foot setback. But again, the county isn't going to enforce that 10-foot setback. Those who are part of the covenants, however the covenants are laid out, would enforce that covenant. Does that make sense?
Thank you. And this question is going to be for Peter. Mr. Taliano. By the way, for people who do not know, Peter Taliano is the gent sitting up there next to Lindsay. And he is the director of planning. So Peter, as we move forward with today's proceedings, we're going to be getting some questions from folks. And would it be a recommendation that we hear all the questions and then answer them at the end rather than answering question by question? What would be your preference, sir?
For the record, Peter Taliano, Community Development Planning Director. Chairman, I would recommend that we answer them in bulk at the end. It seems to flow better that way.
Okay, thank you very much. And so that, thank you very much for that recommendation and guidance. So I think that that's important so that we can get through everybody's, get their questions recorded, and that we will answer them at the end. They'll be written down and then responded to towards the tail end of the meeting. So Ms. Robinson, you've heard Lindsay's answer, and if that needs to be fleshed out later on, we will we'll return to that. Okay, so we've heard two Zoom folks. Now it's time to hear from people who are in the audience. And before we start, thank you everybody for being masked up and being socially distanced. You know, we have to put in a plan. The that we have to give to the public health people. And then not only do we have to put it into we have to not only give them a plan, we have to really make sure that we really actually abide by that. So thank you so much for being so cooperative. It really makes public participation possible. So thank you so much. Thank you very much. Okay, who wants to talk to us tonight? Please go on up to the microphone and state your name and spell it if it's tough, and give us your address.
Thank you, members of the commission. My name is Kim Wilson. My address, my office address is 401 North Last Chance Gulch. I'm here tonight representing the West Valley Community Alliance Network, appearing on their behalf. Members of that organization were among those who gathered petition signatures and were
Could you speak louder, please?
Louder?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
we're among those who signed the petition asking for the zone change. They will have some specific comments tonight. I'm just going to make some general comments in support of the regulations and the neighborhood plan. May I? There we go. So as you all know, under law, the county has to be guided by and give consideration to the growth policy and adopting the zone. Here, the commissioners have already done that in recognizing this zone by adopting it. And we believe that that principle has been carried over into the neighborhood plan and development pattern as well that the staff has put together. First, in terms of the regulations are consistent with the location of the zone and the urban growth and transitional growth areas. The regulations expressly allow uses in the urban growth area that are consistent with the Helena Valley, the 2015 Helena Valley neighborhood plan that was adopted as part of the growth policy. It anticipates urban types of housing and uses. We appreciate the staff adding from the earlier draft expressly allowing parks and trails in the area. The urban growth areas expressly do not allow agriculture, as you know, and we appreciate that. Obviously, the large-scale mining operation that is proposed in the 70-acre empty parcel in the middle of the zone is not compatible, nor is it allowed under the zoning regulations as they're drafted, and we endorse and approve of that. The commercial scale agriculture that has recently started in that 70-acre parcel would not be allowed under the zone, the regulations as adopted, and we realize that the county will have to figure out whether that use is going to be grandfathered in as a non-conforming use of the regulations or not. Turning to the draft neighborhood plan, again, we appreciate the staff's putting this comprehensive document together and the staff's additional language in the neighborhood plan, recognizing the role of the existing ephemeral channels, and that's already been discussed tonight. We think that's a good addition to the language. The staff as well did a good job of tracking the zone's consistency with the growth policy and the 2015 Helena Valley area plan. And as the staff noted in there, there's been overwhelming public support in the neighborhood for this district at the public hearing on July 8th earlier this summer. So in closing, we would urge you as the Planning Commission to adopt the development district and neighborhood plan, and to then recommend that the commissioners adopt the regulations at your next meeting on October 1st. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay, so now we're gonna get everything cleaned up here. You know, we're all tired of COVID. We're done with COVID. COVID's not done with us. So thanks a lot, Warby, for taking care of that. Okay, all right, we're ready for our next in-person commenter. Please do come forward.
pandemics. Oh, Mr. Kim Wilson, I don't know what to say. I've said about everything I need to, so maybe I should just turn around and sit down. But I do want to express two things. First of all, I'm R.C. Harper. 901 Lynn Road.
Can you hear him?
No.
Past chair,
Thank you.
Archie Harper, 901 Lynn Road, past chair of the Helena Valley Flood Committee, current chair of the West Valley Citizens Alliance Network. And the comment that I had, I just had a couple of thoughts here. We support the regulations in their current form. I've reviewed them, the rest of us have reviewed them, and we're satisfied that they will achieve our original intent purpose for this new zone district. I think it adequately preserves the rural residential character, protects our property values, public health, safety and welfare, and enhances the aesthetic character of this piece of this area of the valley that so many people moved here and remain here for these very values that we're seeking. If there's anything that I was disappointed with, there's just one matter. Why did it take so long? What took it so long? That was my question. I think it was a fairly simple statement that we made, and we were all sweating bullets over this gravel pit. That's what really drove it in the get-go. And now we're here. We're on the cusp of this thing being adopted. We highly recommend that it does get adopted. But in the meanwhile, a couple of concerns citizens out there in the West Valley have raised, and I've been getting a lot of phone calls, emails, text messages. And that's the matter of the new land use out there, agriculture use, livestock use out here. The concerns are over the risk of overgrazing, trampling, particularly in the 100-year floodways and ephemeral channels on this alluvial fan dynamic that we have out here that could lend itself to erosion. Another large spring runoff event if vegetation is not allowed sufficient time to recover on that parcel or any other parcel for that matter. In effect, concentrations of cattle that we're starting to see out there could result at risk of some of this fecal material being mobilized in another flood event like we had 2018, 2011, down through these ephemeral draws in the 100-year floodplain, potentially putting at risk shallow residential wells downstream of the area in the surrounding properties. That said, I would like to see something in there that could protect or minimize the risk of that from happening. That's something that we would perhaps work with the manager of the property. We also see that perhaps there may be some responsibility of the Montana Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Should some of that stuff discharge from this parcel property and pose a risk in the downstream properties and surface water. But that basically is all that I had. I think Mr. Kim Wilson said it very well, and I just wanted to emphasize, our concerns as we see things unfolding out here. We do have what would be a non-conforming use now that exists at the time of adoption of these regulations. And that is why we push so hard to get this thing complete. completed. Hopefully it would have been this summer. That's all I have. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Okay, so I think it's time for a couple more Zoom folks. And Karen, how many Zoom folks do we have online?
We have 16 participants at the moment. We do not have anyone who has raised their hand to make a comment.
Okay, so Zoom folks, if you would like to raise your hand, now would be a good time. If not, we'll go ahead and we'll take 2 more in-person folks. So we're gonna just give you a second to figure out how to raise your hand, because if you don't do this every day, it's not gonna necessarily come naturally to you. Okay. No, Andy, you may not Zoom. Okay, all right, let's hear for some more in-person folks. Who else would like to speak to us? Please come on up. Yeah, and you can take your mask off if you get up there, because we're cleaning in between.
Thank you. My name is Ed Sherman. I live at 664 Edgerton Road. I like the way you have finalized this and presented it to us, Lindsay. Job well done. I know it took a long time, like Archie, you know, we were hoping to get this faster, but then again, you had a short staff and then COVID come along too. So I mean, we're just happy and blessed that we're getting this finalized. And you were talking about the ephemeral channels. One of those starts right at my property line and goes out into the open area, the open area. So as far as some of the stuff you talk about, like a culvert and blocking and building in these areas, I can understand what you're talking about, because I see this thing fill up every flood time. So it comes right up to my property line on 2 sides. So I can understand why you're saying that this might have to be checked out real good. But in general, I just want to say, job well done. I'm pleased. I live in that area, and I'm part of the committee that Archie was talking about. And I guess that's about it. I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Who else would like to speak to us? We'll just give Morby a chance here to get everything cleaned up. How are we doing over there on the Zoomers? Do we have anybody who wants to speak yet?
I have one person who has raised their hand.
Okay, well, as soon as we're done with this in-person person, we'll go to a Zoomer. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Marty Stebbins, and it's S-T-E-B-B as in boy, I-N-S. I live at 562 Edgerton Road. I'm coming to you not in my purple shirt with collar, but as a board certified veterinarian in public health and preventive medicine and epidemiology. I want to thank the planning team for putting this together. You have done yeoman's work. I am very pleased with the work that has been done. One of the concerns that we had before the special zone was formulated was public health, especially water and air quality. And I think this plan, especially with the addition of the ephemeral channels, will resolve a lot of that. As far as the 169 head of cattle, including dependent calves, we will work with that as it comes, but they are potentially they're not yet a CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operation, but they are heading in that direction. But thank you very much for your hard work. I fully support the passage of this special zone and the rules that have been put together. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stebbins. Okay, so we've had 2 more in person, so now it's time for a Zoom participant. Karen, who do we have on the line?
Anne-Marie Robinson, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. This is Anne-Marie Robinson at 5345 Brooklyn Court. I did not have you respond to page 22 where you neglected to include Brooklyn Court. as one of the roads, and I didn't hear where that was going to be included as one of the amendments to that, along with the condition of the roads. And if you're going to do that, could you also correct Dutchman Court, Dutchman to be a court and not a drive, please?
Thank you.
And everything.
Okay, and so one thing I should have mentioned, excuse me, one of the things I should mention, if you've spoken once tonight, we're gonna get through everybody before we return to someone who has already spoken, and that will be, that'll be our policy moving forward. And, but we'll go ahead and include those comments and questions for now, Ms. Robinson. Okay, is there any other hand raised?
There is not.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I should have said that at the beginning of the meeting. We want to hear from everybody, and so we want everybody to speak, you know, first time. And if you want to, you know, come back for a second helping, the chair will decide that, but we need to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak at least one time. Okay, so now let's go ahead and hear from some more in-person folks. Two more. Please come on up and state your name and your address.
For the record, my name is Mark Oakey, spelled O-C-K-E-Y. And my wife and daughter and I live at 5235 Dutchman Court. That's within the district. First of all, thank you very much for your diligent efforts to take a look at and evaluate existing and potential land uses, and also potential impacts that future growth may have. I think you've done a great job of keeping it succinct and yet capturing the important pieces. Thank you also for adding the ephemeral channel protection. That I know that's a bit of a controversial thing. I work in stream restoration activity, and frequently, you know, we're dealing with floodplains and that kind of thing, and that does become a financial challenge. It is basic practice, though, that the financial burden rests on the individuals who are proposing a project, and that could be even if it's a project designed to make things better for the floodplain, or if it's something that would be designed to impede. That's, you know, you still have to pay the engineer. Regarding the livestock there, my wife and I have actually kind of enjoyed listening to the cows over the last few days. With respect to at some point becoming a CAFO, that would take a while for it to get to that point. State statute, which would be 75-5-801, I believe, of state law, lays out what a facility has to reach in order to be determined to be a CAFO, and there's an animal number threshold, which they're nowhere near at. And then there's also, depending on the animals that they reach, numbers that they reach, there's whether or not vegetation is present for 45 days or more, and whether or not it's present during the growing season. It pretty well limits it to large feedlots in terms of those types of regulations. There are other statutes that could come into play in terms of, and I'll preface this by I'm not a lawyer, I'm just very familiar with the statutes. And there are other statutes that would come into play in terms of the placement of waste where it could impact state waters, and there are prohibitions in state law against that. Again, I think we're a long ways off from that. You basically have to have bare ground, manure piled high, and water running through it. Water running through it is we're not that far from. That averages every 2 to 5 years from my experience being there, and from my in-laws' experience being there over the last 20-some years. So I guess in summary, I'm very supportive of what you put together. This is great, and definitely encourage you to move forward with it.
would like to speak to us? Who else would like to speak to us tonight?
Good evening, thank you. My name is Janine Moss, it's Jeannene. Moss is M as in Monday, 2 A's, 1 S as in Sam. And I live at 770 Sewell Road in the district. I've been a member of the Valley Flood Committee ever since it started, and I've lived in this neighborhood for a couple of decades. Generally speaking, I am in favor of putting together some guidelines going forward. My questions and comments are a lot more geared towards the process, because as your screen shows, you've got 3 steps. There's a lot that happens between step 1 and step 2, and I would kind of like to have that addressed a little bit if it could be. Proposed regulations were made available earlier this year, and there was a comment period. I submitted comments. I never got an acknowledgement. I don't know if they got submitted. I'd like to know how many comments were submitted. I would be curious how many changes were made to the proposed regulations based on the comments that were submitted this summer. Where does the public go to see this final version? I have not seen. I think I'm in favor of what you have, but I haven't read it, so it's really kind of tough for me to give that kind of confirmation. And I would really like to have this organization address the issue that not only is there Part 1 zoning, there's Part 2 zoning is taking place at the same time. How does that affect people who live in the Part 1 area? Are we expected to be fully involved and fully apprised of every step of the way in both sections? Because it gets really, really difficult to go through all of that. I also kind of enjoyed the sound of the cows, and it's kind of a nice addition to the neighborhood. I really do think so. My biggest comments are about approving and adopting language that the whole public has not had an opportunity to see or weigh in on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munch. Okay. Karen, do we have anybody who would like to speak to us via Zoom?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, then I guess it's back up to the in-person folks. Looks like Warby's got it all warmed up for you. Who would like to speak? Please do come on.
My name is Kim Smith, 7510 Applegate Drive. Smith is an easy spell, so we won't go there. When we first proposed doing a borrow area out here to remove material, the thought was always that this material would not be processed on site, it would have to be. And it could go to an area zoned industrial commercial and be processed there. It'd be a fairly benign operation, probably less dust, not probably. There would be less dust and noise than the motorbikes and the four-wheelers that race across here. There's tracks everywhere. As you know, my application was in at the time. There was no zoning here, and that was presented to open cut. And one of the things we relied upon was Valley Flood Mitigation Master Plan that designs improvements to ditching, systems of roads, containment areas where flood waters can be stored and slowly released. Now, I've heard that's a good idea. I'm not a hydrologist, I'm not sure, but I think it's worth looking into. And we had hydrology tests done and we looked at it. That's pretty much all I have to say about the gravel borrow portion of this. The cows aren't mine. I had a young couple, she's going to school at MSU, she's gonna be a veterinarian, and he runs a little farming operation. And they came to me and they said, we want to fence this, we want to put cows in for a couple months in the fall. We guarantee it's going to improve the quality of the grass and the grazing. They're actually using Mother Nature to seed the thing in more desirable grasses. I don't know. I've never done any agriculture. Archie really likes the rural character of the neighborhood. It's kind of hard for me to imagine a rural area with no agriculture in it. And I would think the commission here, with some of the background, would certainly take a look at that you take, there's only one developable spot, there's only one large parcel here. This whole zoning thing is completely about the parcel that I own. And it's hard to imagine that being a rural area without any agriculture. It's also kind of hard to imagine it being a rural area with quarter-acre lots, of which this zoning provides for. And the, like I said, the original committee, they want to preserve the rural nature of lots. So what they would like to do is, obviously, I'm not going to build in the floodplain. Now you've added the drainages. The drainages can be construed as almost anything. These houses were all built there in all these drainages that they're trying to pull back from right now. In a strange manner, all the housing that went into the floodplain and in these drainages is actually reduced. There's been talk about reducing land values. What actually happened is all this development that went in previously reduced my land value. That was what really happened out here. And it happened 50 years ago, and it is what it is. So, obviously, I'm not going to work in the floodplain without getting a permit, which basically says I'm not going to work in a floodplain, because if you've ever tried to get a floodplain permit, you know why. So now they want to take us out of the floodplain. They want to eliminate agriculture. The only thing they like is quarter-acre lots, but we can't build in anything that could be called a drainage. So what's left? That would be a good question. So I think the commission should look a little hard at not allowing agriculture in there. That's pretty ridiculous. And there also is a potential at some point down in the road, there are irrigation ditches that lead to this piece of property. If it's never used for anything of a higher and better use, irrigation pasture would be absolutely great. But under these zoning regulations, it's not possible. So there's my comments, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Who's next? As soon as Warby's done working his magic here. And Peter, when we have taken comment from everybody, we'll have a chance for the people who have been here in person to take a look at their comments. We'll be able to scroll down and make sure that everybody's good to go with those. All right, I should have been doing this all along, sorry. My fault. Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we get this right and consistent. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Kimberly Pipes Sherman. I'm at 664 Edgerton Road.
Excuse me, ma'am, how do you spell your last name?
Pipes Sherman.
Okay, thank you.
First off, as far as the cattle go, out my back door, I'm an old rancher, generations of. So, Mr. Smith, I like the cattle very much. And I have worked with everybody, trying to make sure things go smoothly, you know. I know that the water, I've spoken with the ranchers, that water is a problem keeping the tanks full. And I know that the cattle will be removed in probably October before the snow. And the problem with the water, I'm sure will be worked out so that there will be plenty of it. I'm not so worried about the cattle and the manure, whatever, you know, it's a good fit for our area. And they do need, you know, we're working with the ranchers too, a couple of us. So that's not a problem, but I do want to let Mr. Smith know that we're good with cattle, okay? So, I don't want any problems with that part of it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Karen, how are we doing on Zoom people?
We do not have any commenters at the moment.
Okay.
We just got one. Hold on just a moment.
Okay. All right, who else in person would like to speak with us tonight? Who else would like to speak with us? Hello, Harold.
I'm Harold Beggar, B-E-G-G-E-R. I live at 790 Sewell, S-E-W-E-L-L Road. My property, I have 7 acres there, and my covenant says that I am allowed to have animals. And I have set up for horses. And it works well, and it hasn't been a problem for anyone. So I'm hoping that this will be grandfathered in, as fact that it's already been there long before I come, 16 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Okay, let's go ahead with anyone else who's here in person who would like to speak to us tonight. Anybody else who wants to talk to us tonight? Okay, do we have anybody on Zoom?
We do. Debbie, I've unmuted you.
Go ahead, please.
You may speak, Debbie.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Can you hear us?
Just barely. Are you able to get closer to your microphone?
Yes, now I can. I'm speaking on behalf of Debbie Wiley. My name is Brian Buckley. I live at 5121 Crescent Moon Drive. And I have a question for the commission. Thank you for hearing me. Even if this zoning goes through, since there is a 100-year floodplain through this zone, does the Army Corps of Engineers have to evaluate that floodplain if any changes are to occur?
Does that conclude your question, Brian?
Yes, it does.
Okay, we've got your question and we'll answer it here as soon as we get all of them arranged, and then we're going to be answering all the questions at the same time. So please, please bear with us as we move forward. I think we're kind of getting close here to the end of people who have spoken at least once. Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else on Zoom? Karen, anybody?
We do not.
Okay, there are no hands raised on Zoom. So let's go ahead. I'm going to ask one more time for people who are here in person who have not yet spoken. Anybody else who's not yet spoken, this is your chance. Okay. Anybody who would like to address this group one more time, we'll go ahead and we'll start with people on Zoom. Is there anybody who is on Zoom who has spoken to us once, but who would like to speak with us again? Any hands raised, Karen?
We do not.
Okay, all right. So how about folks who are here, who've been waiting so patiently? Anybody else who wants to take a second crack at it? Come on up, Archie.
My comment addresses Kim Smith's comment and Harold Baker's regarding to animal use, agricultural use. One of the comments I submitted to the regulations is that it pertains to agricultural uses. I support this. I support it as long as it's conditional use. Because we have to be very careful about the definition of agricultural use. Some people, that could be easily construed to mean something intensive or on an industrial commercial scale like feedlot or cattle. I don't mind cows out there. I grew up around with them. That's my background, rural nature. We do support that kind of activity as long as it's carefully managed, compatible with the needs of the floodplain, and taken into consideration surrounding neighborhood. The folks that I've seen in our zone district that do put horses, any other livestock out there, hasn't posed a problem. People are starting to get a little bit nervous because we're seeing over 130 or 150 cattle. How long is that going to last? If it's rotated properly and managed carefully, I don't think there would be much of an issue. I talked about concerns about potential the risk for contamination downstream in the event of floods. That's what we're concerned about. There's ways to manage the 100-year floodplain can be fenced out if that becomes a concern. So yes, we do support that. In general, it's carefully conditioned. The other thing to consider when I speak about open space stuff, rural type of settings, you know, we have property owners out in the valley there in our area that own quite a bit of land, and that looks favorable for open space studies. I mean, there's property that counts as rural in nature, the open space character, these kinds of things. And so they have monetary value as well in the public, and that's why people like to come out and, you know, live in these areas. I think that those are set very well. It's this mixed character environment. So no, I do not, I'm not against the idea of raising some cattle out there. The parcel is carefully controlled. Just want to make a clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Who else? Anybody else want to take another bite at the apple? Let's hold up 1 second, Kim. Let's get them laid up here. And as soon as we're done taking this round of questions, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to the answering the questions. Maybe that'll give Lindsay and company time to get all the answers squared away. And appreciate everybody with their patience hanging with us on Zoom. I know this technology isn't real comfortable for people sometimes, but this is the best we can do, you know, during these pandemic days. Okay, so go ahead, Kim. It looks like they're ready for you.
Well, Archie, we finally agree on something. I think that it would be very inappropriate to put any kind of industrial agricultural thing out there. I think this is, the idea is to bring in some cattle to graze the ground down, to spread seed. to make it a better pasture. Horses, cattle, I mean, if you guys put something in that restricts certain things, I certainly don't have any problem with that. Maybe a good idea. Like I said, eventually, the best use of it could possibly be irrigated field or park. And if I'm restricted to doing all these things, I would propose maybe that the neighborhood committee put together a plan and they could build a park there, and I would be happy to work with them. And I'd probably sell it for less than I paid for it. And the rural character of the neighborhood, it's funny for people say we really like the rural character of the neighborhood when the one vacant piece of property is almost completely surrounded by closely packed houses, subdivisions, that they are what has taken away the rural nature of the community. So I find that ironic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, everybody, last chance. Anybody else who'd like to speak? Anybody else who wants to speak one more time? Any Zoom people, Karen?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's stand at ease for 5 minutes and give Lindsay a chance to get all these questions answered. And if you would like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Please go ahead and come up. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Wayne Waters, H2O Turtle. I like cattle. I have nothing against cattle. I'm a retired cattleman. But I can see that if he's gonna feed hay, creates a lot of a mess. But if it's just grazed, fine. I just don't know if we need to have him thrown out a lot of hay, cattle make a mess, and that is could end up being a big manure pile. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Okay, thanks to anybody who alerted me to that. Okay. Full range of motion, turning the head. All right, anybody else? 5-minute break. Thanks, everybody. We will stand at ease for another 64 seconds.
Did she unmute? Greg's, oh great, give Greg, or Greg. Is she-
Hello.
No.
Hello.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we were checking to see if you were coming through the house speakers, but you are not.
You sound much better all of a sudden.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so here's what we're going to do before we get to the questions. Ms. Cronick, I'm going to ask you to please read the name of the person who commented. We're going to ask those people to take a look at your comments. Please raise your hand if you believe that we have captured your comments accurately. All right? So, thank you, Ms. Cronick. Why doesn't she do an awesome job? I mean, no kidding. This is hard work. Okay, so tell us, Ms. Cronick, who's our first person? Just raise your hand if we've generally captured your comment.
The first comment was a Zoom caller. I did not catch the last name. Was Matthew. And his summary of his comments were that his concerns for the water quality in the neighborhood, he wanted to remind people that the water is very fragile, and he discussed a situation that he witnessed damage caused by the flooding in that area.
Okay, is Matthew still on?
He is not.
Okay, Matthew has left the building. So, let's see, who's next?
Our next comment was from Anne-Marie Robinson. This was another Zoom comment. She wanted to point out that some of the road names were not correct or that there were missing roads. She wants to be sure that Brooklyn Court is included in the amendments of the regulations, and also wants confirmation that the covenants that her covenants and her HOA will not be affected by the zoning.
Okay, Ms. Robinson, are you still on?
She is, and I have requested her to unmute.
Yes, those are correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up.
Okay, the next comment was from Kim Wilson. He was speaking in support of the process and the regulations, confirmed that the process is being followed in accordance with our growth policy, appreciates allowing parks and trails in the area. A large mining project is not compatible with that neighborhood uses. It's up to the county to allow the non-conforming uses of that nature. There is overwhelming public support for the neighborhood plan. Would like to recommend that this commission approve the plan and would like to further recommend the county commission move to approve.
Mr. Wilson? Yes. You're good on that? Okey doke. Next.
Okay, our next comment was from Archie Harper. Past chair of the Helena Valley Flood Committee. I do apologize, Archie, I didn't get the second committee that you are a member of, if you can confirm that for me. Thank you, I'll add that. Approve of the regulations as written, will help stabilize the property values and the aesthetic appearance of the area. Only one concern was what took it so long. Recommends adoption of the regulations. Concerns have been raised in the West Villa area in regards to grazing and other like uses with the influx of cattle in the area. There is a risk of deterioration in relation to grazing and fecal material in alluvial channels. And then looks like I just have half a thought here about non-conforming uses. So if you could provide that information again.
Well, that relates to,
Come on up.
what I was getting at there on the non-conforming use is this falls under the urban growth area, valley growth policy. And agriculture isn't listed as a land use in the regs. And given that the time frame that this process has been taken, we have the owner operator had that, it gave them that window of opportunity to go ahead and insert a use that is non-conforming. It would be non-conforming at the time that these regulations are adopted.
Thank you, Archie. Okay, correct, got that? And so you're good now, Archie? All right. Okay, who's next? Ed Sherman, I think, correct?
Yes, our next comment was from Ed Sherman. Ed likes the way that this has been finalized and presented. He was hoping this would be done sooner. He shared Archie's sentiments on the what took so long. Can understand what is being discussed in regards to the ephemeral channels and building and how that all kind of plays together.
Okay, is that correct? Yes, sir. He's got the thumbs up. All right, way to go.
Okay, our next comment was from Dr. Marty Stebbins, board certified veterinarian and epidemiologist. She stated that this plan would help alleviate some concerns that were presented, and although it will not address the cattle situation, she feels that there will be a resolution to that situation. So
Dr. Stebbins,
Just add that I was supportive of the plan.
and that she supported the plan. Thank you, Dr. Stebbins.
consider it added. Next comment, Mark, Oki? Is that correct? Is he?
Okay, his comment regarded livestock.
Yes, appreciates the efforts in uses and potential impacts. Appreciative of adding the ephemeral channel information, agrees that costs can be expensive. He did refer to some state statutes in regards to agricultural, industrial uses.
Okay, very good. Since he is not here, anybody else has anything to clarify on that? Okay, let's move ahead then to, I believe the next one was Janine Moss.
Yes, Janine Moss, a member of the flood committee since inception, has questions about the process regarding initiated zoning. Would like to know how many comments were submitted, how many amendments were based on comments received, where you can find a copy of the current regulations, and how does Part 2 zoning affect Part 1 zoning. Would like to be more informed in the process.
Okay, Janine, does that adequately describe what you discussed?
With one exception.
Okay.
With just one exception is the proposed regulations have apparently been changed. Some people have had access to them, others have not. That concerns me.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Moss. Okay, Warby, you want to clean that up? Okie dokie. Mr. Smith, are you still here? Yeah, okay. Of course, everybody realizes, of course, that these are all recorded, okay? So we could always check back. But I just want to make sure that people know that they've been heard and that we've captured what they said accurately in real time. Okay, so Kimberly Pidden Sherman, am I saying that right? You
Kimberly Pipes Sherman.
Pipes, okay, go ahead.
Kimberly likes having the cows right out her back door and has been working very hard with everyone to make sure everything goes smoothly and feels that cattle are a good fit for the area.
You're good with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Harold Becker.
Harold Baker has 7 acres. His covenants state that he is allowed to have animals and is set up for horses and hopes that horses will be grandfathered in to the regulations, as that's been a consistent use for him.
Harold, is that what you said?
That's what I said.
All righty. Okay, Debbie Wiley, she was a Zoom person, and her, speaking for Debbie, was Brian Ubley. Gonna say that, am I saying that wrong? Buckley, sorry, handwriting, terrible. Go ahead.
He only had a question on behalf of Debbie. Even if the zoning goes through because there's a 100-year floodplain, does the Army Corps of Engineers have to review the area? Is Debbie Wiley still on?
Yes, he is.
Yes, this is Brian Buckley. I'm still on. Thank you for hearing my question.
And did we accurately capture your question?
Yes, you did. I want to make sure that if there's any changes to the floodplain, that the Army Corps of Engineers is involved.
All right.
Okay.
You want to modify that? Because it sounded like that was a little bit of an addendum. Maybe I didn't hear all of it the first time, but I think that that was a slight change.
Okay, Brian, I am amending your comment just to include your statement that if the 100-year floodplain is amended, that the Army Corps of Engineers will be involved.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, then we had Archie Harper, the sequel. And what did Archie have to say?
Archie was providing a comment in response to Harold Baker and Kim Smith in regards to agricultural uses. He supports agricultural uses with careful management. People are getting nervous about the volume of animals and the effect they could have. There are people in the valley that he went on to talk about the open land in the valley and the rural character. And there are a lot of people in the valley that have a lot of open land that adds to that rural character. He is not against the idea of raising cattle as long as it's carefully managed and controlled.
Okay, I think the word that he used several times was conditioned.
Conditioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Archie? You're good? Okay. Okie doke, and then Mr. Smith is, has left the building as well, and Mr. Waters.
Okay,
Let's hear what Mr. Waters had to say.
Okay, Mr. Waters likes cattle. He's a retired cattleman. He said that if they're feeding hay, it creates a lot of mess, but grazing is a lot cleaner. Feeding hay also creates a big manure pile.
Yes. Is that it? Okie doke. All right, who else? Let's see, so I think that that is the end of the comments that we received and questions. All right, thank you everybody for keeping us on the straight and narrow here and making sure that we accurately reflect your comments. Okay, Lindsay, you're up. Let's take this opportunity to get the questions responded to that were asked in this evening's proceedings, Lindsay. So why don't you go ahead and take them one by one.
Okay, Chairman Gacy, we received a question or comments from Anne-Marie Robinson. She would like for page 44 of your packets, that's page 44 is shown in red on the top of the page. She would like Brooklyn Court added to the neighborhood plan as one of the roads in the district, and also information about Brooklyn Court, so we can add that to the different locations where we're talking about road maintenance or the current condition of the road, or whether or not it's a local road. We can make sure that all of that information is in there. She also asked that we change Dutchman Drive to Dutchman Court, and I would recommend that we make those changes as well to that transportation network section. As far as the covenants taking precedence, that was a question that I did answer initially for her, so I won't go over that one again. Another question we had was what took the zoning so long? You know, state law lays out the process for Part 1 zoning. Again, it's that 3-step process. We have, you know, multiple projects that our department handles. And so we were reviewing multiple projects at the same time working on this. We had, you know, some delays related to COVID, and we did decide to get some outside assistance from a consultant to help move this process along. And so we had a meeting with the neighborhood in the beginning of July 8th. And as a part of that process, the citizens requested 2 weeks exactly to provide additional comments to us regarding the draft documents. And then we worked with the consultant to make changes to the document and then have that prepared for, you know, the presentation tonight and the presentation to the commission on Thursday, the 1st of October. Let's see. There were some questions about some of the changes that were made to the draft neighborhood plan and draft regulations. During our neighborhood meeting that we had with citizens on July 8th, we we definitely heard concerns from people about protecting the ephemeral channels that exist in the neighborhood. And so you can see, as we've discussed tonight, that was something that was added to the regulations. And we also made some amendments to the neighborhood plan to talk about the ephemeral drainages. And we also created a map that you can find at the end of the zoning regulations that shows where the ephemeral channels are located. We did receive a comment about increasing the minimum lot size in the urban growth area zone. Staff did not recommend any changes to the minimum lot size. We strictly followed what the growth policy lays out, which is no minimum lot size in the urban growth area, and then it calls for rural densities where lots would have special flood hazard area, and those rural densities are 10 acres and larger. So we followed the growth policy in that case. It says include agriculture as a permitted use in the urban growth area zone. We did have citizens that were opposed to having agriculture in the urban growth area. We had citizens who were in favor of it. Staff did not add it as a use because it's an urban growth area. Anything that is existing would be allowed to remain, but it's not something that we allowed as a use. So we did not make that change. It says allowing stormwater storage areas as a permitted use in the urban and transitional growth area zones. That would require gravel removal to create those storage areas. Staff did not make that change. Allowing parks and trails as a permitted use in the urban and transitional growth area zones. Staff did make that change to the regulations and added it to both zone districts. We also had some questions regarding the existing floodplain ordinance and questions regarding large-scale agriculture. And then we received approximately 15 or 16 comments from property owners during that comment period, and then we even received some after. Again, emphasizing the protection of the ephemeral drainages, and staff did make that change to the document. Inclusion of parks and trails as permitted uses, staff made those changes. Did not make changes to add stormwater facilities. Staff did not make any changes to the minimum lot size. Again, we followed what the growth policy has laid out. We did not make any changes to the minimum lot sizes in areas where there's special flood hazards. We did receive comments, concerns about commercial agriculture, such as concentrated animal feeding operations. And we did define agriculture, and we did specifically prohibit the concentrated animal feeding operations. Again, that agricultural use is something that right now, as the regulations are drafted, is allowed under the transitional growth area zone. So we did put something in there about that. And that also helped with comments we received about better defining agriculture in general. And then we had some comments about reducing setbacks in the transitional growth area, and we did make a change to the setbacks. There were some other changes that were made to maybe general services, general professional services. We did amend that and removed the general services and left in the professional services under the definition. So those were some of the changes that we made to the documents. So as far as where the regulations are found, one of the things that we did when we provided notice of the neighborhood meeting for that July 8th meeting is we did send out notices to all property owners in the district, and we posted signs in the district saying, you know, here's when the meeting is going to be, but we also said, here's where you can find copies of the regulations and the neighborhood plan electronically. And so we had that available on the county's website so that people could review the regulations in advance of coming to the meeting, and also provide comments to us We did the same thing again for this meeting and for the upcoming county commission meeting. We noticed both meeting dates, and we also provided the electronic location of both documents. In addition to that, we also put a copy at the clerk and recorder's office, which is something that we always do with zoning. So there's a hard copy available there. There's actually a hard copy available at our office, and then the electronic copies that are available online.
Okay, so I have a question, I'm gonna interrupt you there. So, how often did we update that website? So there were changes that were made or recommended, how often was that website updated?
Commissioner Giese, the regulations remained on the website until the notices were sent out to the property owners, and then they were updated again after that. So there was a little bit of a very short window of time where there were no regulations online, and it just said, you know, they're coming. And then we posted those again, but the regulations, we had regulations out there from probably June at some point until now, with just that small gap at the beginning of September.
Okay, the gap was several days, a week?
The gap was maybe a week.
Okay, thank you. Okay, continue.
And it says, how will the Part 2 zoning impact this area? Now, this is a citizen-initiated district, so it follows different processes and different statutes to be created. So Part 2 is really, it's separate from this process. I don't know if Mr. Italiano wants to speak to that. He's been working on the Part 2 regulations. Peter?
For the record, Peter Italiano, Community Development Planning Director. Based on our legal counsel's direction, this has been going on for quite some time, at least probably a year or so. The official position is that there is no relationship whatsoever between Part 1 and Part 2 zoning. So if somebody's property falls within a Part 1 district, any Part 2 zoning in the area has no impact or effect on it, and vice versa is true.
Did everybody understand that? Okay. All right, move on.
Okay, the next question is from Mr. Smith, and he essentially said that you know, work within the floodplain. He had concerns saying that the zoning doesn't allow him to do anything in ephemeral drainages. It's not allowing any work to be done in the floodplain. Not that he's planning to do any work in the floodplain, and then he had some concerns about agriculture not being allowed as a use and what is left. And I just want to clarify that it doesn't say that you're prohibited from doing something where there's an ephemeral drainage or ephemeral channel. What it's saying is that we just want to make sure that if you are crossing over that channel or doing something, that you're not going to impact its ability to carry floodwater through. So, for example, if somebody wants to propose a subdivision or some sort of development of, you know, of the property, maybe a house or whatever they're planning to do, and they need to cross that either with a road or a driveway or something, that's something that we would review just to make sure that that channel continued to flow as it always had. So there are, you know, things that you could do with property. It's not a situation where everything's being eliminated. Again, right now, staff has recommended that agriculture not be allowed as a use because it's in an urban growth area, but that is something that you could consider adding that as a use if that's something that the commission would like to do. And as far as work in the floodplain, you know, people can do certain things in the floodplain. It just depends on, you know, what exactly you're doing. So it's not a situation where everything has been eliminated. As far as Mr. Becker had a question about are horses grandfathered. You know, horses would be considered more agricultural. If somebody has horses currently or they have some sort of an agricultural use, there is a section that talks about what happens if zoning is adopted and you have these uses that are not currently allowed. Those uses would be allowed to continue. You just aren't allowed to expand that use. We had a question about, from Mr. Buckley or Mrs. Wiley, about whether or not the Army Corps has to evaluate any proposals, floodplain related proposals. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers does require a permit. They require a permit if it's considered a navigable waterway. In this case, you wouldn't have a navigable waterway, but when we review a floodplain development permit, we do require the property owner to get some sort of a statement from all the different agencies that could potentially be involved in issuing that floodplain development permit. And so one of those agencies is the Army Corps of Engineers. So even if we know that it's not a navigable waterway, they get a statement from the Army Corps of Engineers. Then when we actually do our review, we solicit comments from the Army Corps of Engineers. So they do see a project, even if it's something that doesn't fall within their jurisdiction. If somebody's proposing some sort of other change to the floodplain, again, this isn't a navigable waterway, so they wouldn't, it wouldn't necessarily require a permit, but they are going to see what somebody's proposing. And I believe that the final question was from Mr. Harper, and it had just a statement about conditional use permits or conditions if agriculture were to be allowed in the urban areas. Right now, we don't have any conditional uses. We don't have a process in there for getting a conditional use permit. We just have agriculture not allowed in the urban growth area zone, but allowed in the transitional growth area zone with a definition that lays out, what agriculture is, and then specifically prohibiting those, larger operations and also, similar activities being prohibited. So I believe that I've answered all of the questions. If there's something that I have missed, please let me know.
Okay, I think that you've done a great job on that, especially on the fly. That's hard work. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is to open, so public comment on this is over for now. Peter, if I'm going wrong, you tell me, okay? So let's close public comment for now, and now the commission will have some chance to ask questions of staff, and then as soon as the questions are exhausted, then we will go ahead and commence discussions. Remember, we're going to have two motions. One, where this body has authority, is the consideration of the neighborhood plan for special zone district number 51. And then there'll be a second where this body will recommend to the Board of County Commissioners the regulations. So I'm going to stand up so I can see. Do we have any questions from, Angie, I'm just going to start with you. We're just going to move forward this way. Angie, do you have any, this is Angie Sparks sitting back in the red mask. She's a clerk of court. Angie, do you have any questions? Okay, no questions from Ms. Sparks. Joyce Evans, you're next.
I have one question.
Mike.
Hello.
Oh, thank you. There, was that? Okay. Better? Yep, go ahead. Okay, I guess I'm confused because I thought Mr. Smith had his request for preliminary approval on his project in before this zoning was requested. Is that going to have any effect either way on that?
Could you repeat that?
Okay, I thought that Mr. Smith had his preliminary request for an open pit or gravel pit or whatever he's putting in there. He had that in before this zoning was proposed. Is that correct? And does it, what kind of an effect is that going to have on the zoning?
Ms. Evans, with regard to the question about Mr. Smith's gravel mining operation application that he submitted to DEQ, that does become more of a legal question that I can't answer. I can tell you that he did submit an application to DEQ and that application has been deemed incomplete.
I guess what I'm asking is, okay, he still has it in there. If it's incomplete, I mean, he still has it in, correct? As far as the date, you know, whatever he submitted.
So Ms. Evans, I'm not able to answer that question. That's something that our attorneys would have to answer. So I don't know how that would work. I can just tell you that the application is incomplete at this point in time. Now, when it comes to like a subdivision review, for example, if somebody submitted a subdivision application to us, it's written into state law where the application would have to be deemed complete and sufficient for it to be grandfathered under the regulations that exist at that time. But this is something that's different.
So basically, the attorneys are going to have to look at it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter, tell me if I'm going wrong here, but I would say in response that the issues are separate. And so DEQ makes the call apparently on the gravel pit. So what we do here tonight does not necessarily, is not necessarily impacted by that freestanding request that is sitting in front of DEQ. Am I correct, Mr. Italiano?
For the record, Peter Italiano, Community Development Plan Department. Commissioner Giese, Chair, yes, you are correct. As Lindsay Morgan stated earlier, the processes are separate and distinct within state statute. Nothing that is being done by this body and ultimately by the Board of County Commissioners would have a direct impact, as we understand it legally at this point, upon DEQ and their ability to move forward or not move forward. And likewise, the question of whether or not this zoning, if approved, ultimately would have an impact on a DEQ permit if that was approved in the future is also something that our attorneys are looking at, but has not yet resolved the answer.
Do you have a further question, Ms. Evans? No. Okay, thanks. Paulette, you're up.
No, no question.
Okey doke. Commissioner McCormick.
No questions, thank you, Madam Chair.
Hello, Commissioner Hunthausen. Anything you want to ask?
Hello, Madam Chair, maybe? Hello? There, she's green. Yes, Madam Chair, please, for Lindsay Morgan, please, Planner Morgan. Planner Morgan, I just to make sure I understand where we're going here. I had the understanding that any zoning proposed or any neighborhood plan had to substantially comply with the growth policy. Is that not accurate?
Chairman Giese, Commissioner Hunthausen, Lewis and Clark County has followed our growth policy when we adopt neighborhood plans and zoning regulations. It's very clear in state law that with part 2 zoning that you need to follow your growth policy. It's not as clear with part 1, but Lewis and Clark County has always followed our growth policy recommendations.
Right, and it seems, Madam Chair, if I could, it seems a good policy in that it would potentially create conflict, as especially our growth policy deems a good portion of this proposed zoning district, or this is a zoning district now, yes, boundaries are set, aren't they? It deems it as urban growth area. And so the urban growth area, as it is described in the growth policy, that's basically how you've laid this out, correct?
Chairman Giese, Commissioner Hunthausen, what I did is I looked at this as being, it's an agricultural, or there's some agricultural areas in here, but this is an urban growth area.
Right.
And in an urban growth area, we are looking for dense development, except for where you wouldn't have it because there's a special flood hazard area. And so that is how I looked at it. The growth policy doesn't specifically get into a lot of uses, but that's how, that was staff's recommendation, is to not allow ag. But again, I don't think the growth policy really gets into all the uses, just really into the lot size and density in this area and then the special flood hazard.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Madam Chair, that's it for now. Thank you.
Commissioner McCormick?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I had it out here ready to go. Question is, urban growth area prohibits business ventures in the urban growth area, if I read that correctly. And in the proposed regulations for this zone district regarding businesses, it goes into a definition of those businesses that would be permitted. And those are, having to do with so many trips per day into the property, having to do with noise, having to do with use. And I just wanted to make sure that they were, those two were compatible, or if I was even looking at these correctly. Am I making sense there?
So Chairman Giese, Commissioner McCormick, the urban growth area allows for home occupations, and home occupations are when you get into a definition that talks about how many trips, or is it going to smell, or those kinds of things. It also does allow for professional services, which is defined differently, and that doesn't get into trip generation. That just basically lays out, here's some professional services that are also allowed in the district. So it's only when you're dealing with a home occupation, some sort of business that you're running out of your home, where there are those types of parameters, like how much traffic and so on.
Okay, so these proposed regulations are compatible with the UGA and in those definitions, because what I understand is the uses in the UGA are quite general as by definition, and there's more detail in these proposed regulations for Special Zone District 51.
Chairman Giese, Commissioner McCormick, yes, this would be compatible with the urban growth area.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any further questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission? Any further questions? Seeing none, I have one. So when we talk about the agriculture issue, will there be a chance, if this board tonight adopts the neighborhood plan, can that neighborhood plan be for any reason modified when the commission meets October 1st?
Chairman Giese, so if the neighborhood plan is adopted tonight, then when the commission meets on October 1st, they wouldn't be able to make any changes to the neighborhood plan. There would be a separate process to come back before the Planning and Zoning Commission to make changes to the neighborhood plan. Some of the, it's not to say that the commission couldn't look at regulations and make some changes to the regulations, as long as something different than what maybe the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends. That's certainly a possibility. You just want to make sure that the changes that you make aren't something that doesn't comply with the neighborhood plan.
Okay, so the focus of my question is gonna be about, because we've heard some varying comments about agriculture. And where in the whole scheme of things are we going to address that particular aspect? Would that be in the neighborhood plan or in the regulations?
Chairman Giese, the concerns are more, they're located in the regulations.
Okay, all right, so if anybody else was confused about that, don't be anymore, okay? So thanks for squaring me away.
Thank you. No, I understand.
All right?
Yep.
Everybody good on that?
Yep.
Because we've heard some stuff about agriculture, but that's not gonna be decided here tonight. That will be decided again on October 1. Right, Lindsay, right, Peter? Okay, and Colette, please.
Madam Chair, I have a question then. If the Board of County Commissioners approve the regulation, can they not make a change to that before they approve it? If it's separate from the plan we approved tonight?
So Chairman Giese, Commissioner DeHart, so how it would work, you make the decision on the neighborhood plan tonight, and that's done.
Right.
And you make a recommendation to the commission on regulations. When the commission gets the regulations, they can make changes to it. They just have to make sure that the changes they make aren't something that conflicts with an adopted neighborhood plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for clarifying that for me, Lindsay, because I had a little bit of confusion there. What you get with being 70. Okey doke. Let's see. Anything else from the panel? Are you ready to make some kind of a motion? Is there anyone who would like to make a motion? And the motion that the chair would entertain at this time would be to adopt the neighborhood plan for special zone District 51, also known as a 10-mile alluvial fan. Is that correct, Lindsay?
Chairman Giese, yes, it is called the 10-mile alluvial fan. I just also wanted to make sure that we have also those staff recommendations out there.
Right.
For updates to the neighborhood plan, and then also we had Mrs. Robinson had some comments about making changes to Bonanza and Dutchman. I just wanted to make sure that those were.
Okay, and the way I was going to handle this was to have the global motion, that we would accept that, and then as a sub-motion then, that we would make those additions. All right? Everybody clear on that? Okey doke. So the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, just one more question prior to the motion, if I could, from Ms. Morgan. If agriculture was going to be addressed now, or in the future, the commission takes up the regulations, would any change to any change to those regulations, would it impact the neighborhood plan as it stands? Any sense of that? So we wouldn't be in conflict. For example, if this body approved the neighborhood plan tonight, and then on the first, we added agriculture to the allowed uses in the regs, would that be in conflict? I don't want to set us up for conflict.
So
delaying of this thing.
Chairman Giese, Commissioner Hunthausen, I'm just going to read the section on agriculture in the neighborhood plan. I don't believe there's any sort of an issue there, whether you keep agriculture or you add it in as a use, or if you don't add it in. Here's what it says in the neighborhood plan. Based upon a site visit, there are a number of properties scattered throughout the neighborhood that are used for agricultural purposes, particularly for the keeping of saddle horses. There are also several properties in the southwestern portion of the neighborhood that appear to be used for irrigated pasture or growing grass hay. As mentioned earlier, the Natural Resource and Conservation Services classifies two soils in the neighborhood as either being of statewide importance or as being prime farmland if irrigated. There are Assiniboine, Chinook, and Thess Loam, respectively. See figure 3 for the locations of these soils. Lewis and Clark County does not have a local ordinance regarding the protection of farmland. So that is currently what is stated in the neighborhood plan.
Madam Chair, I'm ready.
All right,
With that, I
Chair will entertain a motion.
for more conflict. Madam Chair, I move that we approve resolution 2020-01, a resolution of Planning and Zoning Commission to create a neighborhood plan for special zone district number 50.
Is that the motion?
And
I
yes,
thought we were going to adopt. Am I
that's what I said,
confused?
adopt resolution 2020-01,
Okay,
which is the neighborhood plan resolution.
is this the right motion?
We're adopting the neighborhood plan tonight.
All right. I just want to make sure that we don't get jammed up here. Okay, all right, so the motion in essence is to adopt the neighborhood plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a second. And the second is from Angie Sparks. Is there discussion among the board?
Madam Chair, prior to making a decision on that, on the resolution and adopting of the neighborhood plan, I would move that we add in the staff recommendations or changes that were presented here tonight, as well as the recommendations to add the streets described by Ms. Morgan, and those changes to the transportation descriptions. And
Okay, and with those were passed out to us, everybody's got them?
yeah, she described them on the record.
Right,
Madam Chair.
okay. Does anybody have it, so that's your motion? Okay, that's your motion, we need a second. Okay, and let's see, and Andy Sparks say yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss just these additions. They seem to be mostly clerical in nature, and including the recommendations made by Ms. Robinson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, let's revert to the global motion. Global motion is in essence to adopt the neighborhood plan. Let's talk about that. Anybody have any comments about that? Seeing nobody come forward, we have a motion in a second. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, now we're going to be at that part of the meeting where we will discuss the consideration of the regulations for special zoning district. And for this, we're asking this board to recommend to the county commission about the regulations. Does anybody have a motion on that? Andy, do you want to make that motion as well?
Sure, Madam Chair. I move that we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners the regulations for special zoning district number 51 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and that will be on consideration on October 1. Is there further discussion?
Madam Chair, yes. Just like it to be noted again and for the County Commission to consider, there's been significant discussion regarding possibility of agricultural uses in the urban zone.
Absolutely, something to consider. All right. And just for point of clarification, Mr. Taliano's questions for you. So when we, on October 1st, we're going to open again a whole public hearing on this, that is correct? All right, so people who want to come and talk to us, for example, about that agriculture aspect, will have the opportunity to do that at that time. Is that correct? Okay, so don't, because this has been fascinating, hasn't it? So I know you probably want to come back. So that'll be on October 1st. All right, I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there was going to be additional opportunity to weigh in on that. Okay, is there further discussion from the group? Yes, Paulette. Oh, Paulette, you won't be here, but that's okay because it'll be up to the commission at that point.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say one more time what a good job Lindsay's done, because this is a horrendous job.
Yes, thank you very much, Lindsay. Good work. Good work to our whole planning staff. Thank you. Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. Yep. Lindsay.
Chairman Geesey, I just wanted to remind you that there is that staff recommended change to the ephemeral channel. It's something that you could consider, that was staff's recommendation.
All right, and that is for October 1.
Chairman Geesey, you could consider that, or you could consider adding that tonight as a recommendation to the county commission. It's up to the planning and zoning commission.
If you guys want to recommend that now, or we can take it up on October 1.
Madam Chair, I have full intent to include the staff recommendation in my motion.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. We've had some discussion. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Nothing to it. Okay, all right. So we have a decision and we have a recommendation, and now we'll move on to other business. Lindsay, is there anything else in the world going on for other business?
Chairman Geesey, I don't have anything work related that's coming before you immediately. I do have a project that came in that's a text amendment to special zone district number 13A to their commercial use section, but that application has not been deemed complete.
Okay. So nothing at this time?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, so our next scheduled meeting then will be as required when all of those other ducks are in a row. Is that correct?
Chairman Geesey, you are correct.
Okay, all right. So now we are at the part of the meeting where this particular group will accept public comment on any public matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission that is not on tonight's agenda. See nobody come forward. We're adjourned. Thank you for your patience, everyone.